Hi, everybody. So thanks so much for coming today. I guess we're going to start with a quick introduction of ourselves, and then we can drop in Q&A. So I'm Alexei. I'm a software engineer. I graduated from EPITA. I co-founded a company called MotionLead with Arthur and Lewis, my two co-founders. We launched the company about 3 years ago. 4 months after launching the company, we went to Y Combinator. That's actually where we met in Silicon Valley. And I am based in New York today, launching our New York office. And I'll be hopefully answering all your questions today.
Okay, so I'm Nicolas, one of the co-founders of Algolia. I was also a software engineer. It's been a long time ago. We created the company in 2012 in Paris. We actually were among the very first companies to participate to the family. At that time, it was in another part of Paris. And shortly after, we participated to Y Combinator. We are today 58 people, 13 of them based in San Francisco, the rest in Paris, so spread across the continent. And YC has been an awesome experience, and I'll be very happy to share that with you.
Cool. So we want to make sure that we get as many questions as possible. So I guess we'll just start with a quick context about YC. Just as a reminder for those who already know, and for some of you who might not know, Y Combinator is a seed venture accelerator, seed venture firm or accelerator, depending on what you want it to be. They invest in about 150 companies per batch now. I think 120 or 150 companies per batch. There's more and more French companies getting into YC. I think Sam mentioned recently that France was the second, wait, correct me if I'm wrong, I think second most, the last batch, the second country that had the most companies sent to YC, other than the US, is France. So that's really great that we have a lot of talent here, and we are here today to share our experience and make this a lot easier for you guys and for your friends to access this ecosystem. The one thing I wanted to get before we started the questions is just to understand really who's here today. So I'll just divide into a few categories. Basically, if you're applying to YC today, if you're thinking about applying to Y Combinator at some point, if you're thinking about creating a company at some point, and if you're not sort of creating a company and you're working around the startup ecosystem. So first group, is anybody here applying to Y Combinator? All right. So wait, can you raise your hand? All right, 1, 2, all right. A few, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, cool. 5. So, all right, cool. Is anybody thinking? Yeah, I saw you there. Is anybody thinking about applying to Y Combinator sometimes in the future? All right, that's great. And is anybody here, not within a company today and wants to launch a company later on in the future? Awesome. All right, and then is anybody here not like within a startup and maybe working in the startup environment, like a, I don't know, journalist, VC, anything else, or anything other than a startup? All right, not a lot of you guys here. Cool. So one thing before we get started, we launched about 3 weeks ago. We launched about a free initiative to help more French companies get into YC. So 10 alumni from Y Combinator gathered, and we decided to create, one email address and one point of contact to make sure that anybody in France or any company who has a French founder can easily get access to 10 alumni who are ready to help, who are ready to review an application, make the relevant intros in the US market. Or anywhere in the world, who are ready to, if there's a strong fit, to give a recommendation to really help the applicant get a shot at Y Combinator. A lot of the times, it depends on how you build your application. It depends on what you emphasize on and how you pitch yourself. And a lot of the times, simple things can really make a difference. So this initiative is again launched 3 weeks ago. 10 French alumni. So Nicolas is part of the 10. I'm part of the 10 as well. There's great founders in there. There's Mathilde from Front, Danielle from Checker. I'm not gonna quote them all, but they're all very committed, and they're all ready to help more French startups. So I think it's great, to be able to provide help at scale in France. And maybe you can share a little bit about your YC experience, and then we can kick it off.
Yeah, of course. YC experience. Where do I start? From the application, maybe? So Algolia, back when we applied, that was 2014. So we actually applied 2 times. The first time was early in the year for the summer batch. We really spent a lot of time on the application, making sure there was no bullshit, nothing, like very straight. It worked very well. Got a couple of recommendations. Got the interview. So if you don't know, you apply online. If you are accepted, then you need to fly to San Francisco to spend 10 minutes with some partners there, and that's when they decide to get you in or not. We didn't get in. We fucked up the interview. I guess we didn't really know what we were doing at the time. But that experience was really incredible for us because we decided to spend about 1 week there. We met so many entrepreneurs, so many people. We got so much feedback from everyone that it transformed the company. Getting back from the Silicon Valley, we started to project ourselves into what was the differentiators of our product, where we could go later on. Like a month or 2 later, we were so convinced we were on the right track. We had found we call that our solution problem fit that we wanted to accelerate. We raised in France and then launched the product, started to hire a few employees, and we are in October, end of September. I went to San Francisco again to meet with prospect customers. Some of them were YC alumni. They all told me, oh, you should apply again. Of course, we didn't think about that. I mean, we already had raised. Why apply again? Of course, they were right. We applied again. We spent the second time maybe 3 hours, 4 hours to do the application. It was, basically much easier. We knew what we were doing, so that was the most important. And that time it went really well. We already had a couple of alumni as customers. That helped a lot with YC. We already had one of them who was actually a partner at YC. That helped a lot in terms of recommendation. And so we got in. Moved to Silicon Valley in January. So we actually met just after, probably in November, something like that, when we were there.
Yeah, we were the French at YC at the time.
And we were actually 3 French companies. There was also Wit AI that was in that batch. And then flew there, spent 3 months there. It was awesome. I mean, maybe we can keep that for a bit later.
Sounds great. All right, so now you have a little bit of context. Let's jump into Q&A and see what you have. So if anybody wants to ask us a question about YC, now is the time.
So my question is, excuse my English. My question is, do you have to create a startup before applying to the Y Combinator, or you can apply with an idea or a concept?
Yeah, I think you can apply with an idea.
Yeah. The FYI, somebody in our batch pitched a PowerPoint presentation. So they didn't have a product, they had a PowerPoint presentation and they got in. So if you have the right team, it can be an idea.
Maybe to add up to the answer while you get the mic, is actually take people at basically any stage up to Series A. So we were among the latest stage ones when we got in. For us, I mean, having already raised, but there were still even later stages than us applying there. So from idea to, let's say, Series A.
Hello. My question, you said you fucked up the first application, and then finally you made it. I mean, it seemed you raised some money and you started your business. Why did you apply it again?
You mean the second time?
Yeah.
So our company was, from day one, we targeted like a worldwide audience. We are an API for developers, so like there is no borders. And USA was obviously our biggest market. So it was important for us to basically penetrate the market there in the US. We saw YC as a good opportunity to go faster. So the question was, how much faster? You are diluted by 7%. That's the thing that we didn't say. So they take 7%. Even if you have raised, they don't care. So for us, that was a big 7%, let's say. But in the end, today, I believe we probably went. Probably went maybe 1 year faster than we would ever have done without them. And just that 1 year is definitely worth the 7%. It also gave us kind of pace, rhythm, the connection, everything that helped us to go faster later on. It was not obvious for us before applying, but that's where alumni were very useful. That's basically the alumni that convinced us to apply again.
Hi. A question for Algolia. Did you design first your app Algolia for the French market, or did you talk about San Francisco as a global at first?
We actually never had any word in French on the website, ever. So from the first day, we knew if we wanted to address the international market, we should directly go with English. The big advantage is that even French developers can understand English. So, of course, our very first beta testers, our very first contacts were from France. And what happened is that the first time we applied to IC, only one of the company among like the maybe 30 companies we met, one of them became our most important beta tester. It was SocialCam. Actually, in the team of SocialCam, there were Guillaume Luciano, who was a French guy who moved there. That's how we got like maybe a better reception maybe. And the CEO of SocialCam, Michael Siebel, was also part-time partner at YC. And SocialCam was a YC company. Maybe I can give you like the very short story of SocialCam. So like you guys, we were looking at how to get into YC. That's how. And one day I was listening to podcast, and there was this guy, Jérémy Rossmann, a French-American guy who was working in a YC company, who was interviewed. And a French guy in YC, let me contact him. I got on a call. Not only did he recommend us, but he also made a few right introduction, and he introduced us to Michael Siebel, the CEO of SocialCam. Michael told us, no, we have searched, we don't care. But he CC'd Guillaume. Guillaume asked the question, by the way, how much would that cost? So of course we got very excited. We made like a incredible offer at cost just to get them in. And then Guillaume said, no, that was just to check, just to know. Fuck. But then we got accepted to the interview, and so we called him, hey, by the way, we are around, can we drop by, show you the product? We did. We showed him the product, so it was just, no UI, no nothing, just an API. And he was so impressed that the next day they were starting their tests. SocialCam was pretty famous at that time. They don't exist anymore, but they had like 130 million users, and that was a bit big for our product at that time. But he was very comprehensive. He said, maybe you can stop here. Let us do a few things before. 2 weeks later, we were ready. They pushed everything. It worked. We were still on beta. And then Guillaume called me. I was in France and said, we are ready to go to prod. Can we go? And I basically said, no. It's a beta. It's only on one server. The server fails. You don't get anything. And he went ahead anyway. And that worked. Fortunately, on this one. A couple of months later, we had created our like fault-tolerant infra, so that was okay. But for like a couple of months, it was a bit tense. And Guillaume became also our very first business angel. So that was the story.
Hey, I was wondering, you two guys, if you think that Y Combinator is appropriate for companies that are not exactly the venture style. I mean, by venture style, companies that would have a very big potential market and would raise a lot of money, or you think YC would be also interested in smaller but also more sustainable products, like niche market, yeah.
Is it a niche market that can expand into something, or are we talking about a restaurant, or are we talking about?
No,
No.
not a restaurant, but imagine a product like a software or a small niche market tool that sure you can expand on the long term, but at this stage would have a market not exceeding like a few millions, but wouldn't go to the billion crazy stuff that we usually see in the success stories of YC.
I would say the short answer is no. The longest answer is that they need to see the potential of a huge valuation, basically. They need to see a billion dollar company in you. Doesn't mean that your product market at the beginning needs to be that size, that big, but they need to believe in your potential, either by moving to another market or to doing something else or anything else. But if you don't have the ambition to go that far, I mean, they are venture capitalists themselves. I mean, they don't need you to raise any money after. If you can achieve that without raising money, that's great for them. They don't care. But they need you to aim for that. Or non-profit. They also have a lot of non-profit.
And one of the things too, that's really the answer. And one of the things is, during our interview, I think at the time, it might have been even in the application folder, in the application online, but when we went in the interview for Y Combinator, the second question was, it was like 5 seconds after we started, it was, how do you get to $1 billion in revenue in, I think 2 years? Maybe 1 year, I don't remember the scale, but it was 1 or 2 years, and how do we get to $1 billion in revenue after 2 years? So that really shows, what they're expecting from companies that they're investing in. They need to see, I'm assuming they're not expecting us to drive $1 billion in revenue in 2 years, but that's what they're they want to see a path that takes you there, even if it's not in 2 years.
And that was actually the reason they refused our first application. I mean, the first interview, the feedback they gave was, oh, you get a great product, but people like big companies will never outsource that to you, and the small ones won't have the money to invest there. So that means that, oh, you'll do a company that will work, but you are not VC compatible. That made us think a lot, and that actually transformed the company. No, the thing is that when we did that interview, we didn't have any. I mean, we were just a search engine. We didn't have any differentiators. We didn't show how we could be 10x better in at least something. We didn't have that differentiation that we found like shortly after. But at that time, it was not there yet. And we didn't have any traction yet. We were in beta. So it was too early to show any traction. So we didn't have anything compelling for them.
Hi, 2 questions for you. The first question is to deep dive the question of the stage, the level of development. What is the best moment to apply to YC to benefit from the accelerator? And the second question is, what are the recipes for success? Do you have some tips for the preparation?
So let's divide this into the first part. I think it's interesting because we applied, at least we got in Y Combinator. We were at 2 different stages. We had launched the company 4 months before applying, and Nicolas, as he mentioned, they raised a little bit over. Is it public?
Yeah, it's okay. 1.2 million euros.
So they've raised more than $1 million before going to YC. So I think it'll be interesting to really analyze the different things. For us, Y Combinator really helped. I mean, with a lot of different things. I'm not gonna. That can be another question, but they help a lot of different things that are relevant to our stage. And I saw how they operated with some of our friends there who had even an earlier stage. Again, one company even just had a PowerPoint presentation when they got in. So my answer is I don't think there's a perfect stage, to get in, as long as you are in the mindset of, do I want to do something with the US market? Do I want to expand and so on? If you have, a yes to those questions, then YC is pretty much good at any stage. At least that's how I feel it. But I've been to YC on an earlier stage side, so I'll let Nicolas pitch on the later stage.
Yeah, my take is probably, but not by a high margin, it's probably providing more value to earlier stage than later stage, just because of the equity in the end, but also in terms of if you go later stage, there are many things that you may not need from them. That it could help you with. I mean, we didn't need any help with the product, for example. So that's something we never got any help from them because we didn't ask for it and we did not need it. The thing is, you will find in YC what you seek, what you come to find. If you are just waiting for them to educate you, it's not going to work. You need to be there, you need to ask for their help, and they'll be very happy to help you in the best way they can. But if you need them to know what to do, not going to work. It's more like them asking you the right questions, answering your own questions, and helping you along the way of making the best decisions. But in the end, it's your decisions.
I mean, we'll probably do like a written something eventually with like the tips, but I think I'll just talk about a few things that I've noticed so far. The one thing is that people are afraid to show their long-term vision or to show like the crazy plan that they have. So I think often that's something that's been hurting some companies. They're focusing too much on the small little thing that they're doing, but they're not focusing enough or emphasizing enough on their longer term and the as we talked about, like how do we get to $1 billion in revenue. Another thing, and that's very pragmatic, and it's very simple, but French people, and I think we've talked about it with some of the people here, French people love to write crazy long applications, and they can't summarize, whatever they're thinking into a short written sentence. So I think that, that hurts as well when you really see a long application, you can't really quickly understand what's going on. Another thing might be to, you need to make sure that the first sentence, you need to describe your company into like 4 or 5 words. And I think a lot of people underestimate the importance of that, but that 4 or 5 words that you're going to write, that is something that, for example, if you pitch me and if I need to pitch somebody else on your behalf, if I want to make an intro or if I want to talk about your product to one of my friends, I need to have that 4 or 5 words, those 4 or 5 words that are really going to help me pitch you easily. And it just helps me understand very quickly what you're doing. And I think a lot of companies are underestimating the power of those few words at the beginning. Those are some of the things I can think of. I don't know.
Yeah, just put you in their shoes. They have like thousands of applications every batch, and yeah, we are like not like famous in France for writing like complex sentences and so on. They are reading like application day long. If it's too difficult to read, I mean, they don't read. They just go to the next one. So very focused, no bullshit, ambition. So we're speaking about that before. Basically, they prefer to invest in someone that has a like 1% chance of doing something huge, that someone who has 100% chance to do something just average. So you need to show that in your application that you have this potential.
Hi, I would like to know how important it is to really sell your team, like to represent your team and your skills, and would having a bad team would be a veto criterion, or is it only just the business idea that counts in the business plan?
The team is the most important for them. I mean, they already have taken up like teams without their ideas. Like, oh, I love your team, but your idea is so shit. Please change the idea, and you can get in. That happened, and you want to show that as much as possible that the team has like some prior connections. I mean, it's not just a team you created just to apply to YC. They want to see some people that are already tied together. And if you do the interview, you need to go all together to the interview, and you need to make sure everyone is going to speak. Otherwise, it will show some kind of like they wouldn't like that.
Yeah, no, I mean, the team is number one, and a lot of the times people ask us if if they find a CTO like tomorrow and they pitch like to YC, but weak connection. Like a lot of the times, company fail because of the founders, and so they prefer to invest in founders that are sticking together and that have I think that's a question in the written application is how have the founders met? When and how have the founders met? So it's really important for them to know, if you've spent time together, if you've done, trips together, if you've been to school together, but whatever the connection is, it needs to be strong.
And be careful on all these questions. It's better if you have like a formal connection with your co-founder for like 10 years, but if you don't, it's okay. They also accept solo founders. Even if they don't like solo founders, they accept them anyway if they think the founder is great enough. So there is no criterion that is like a red flag or anything. It's just a lot of signals.
You already mentioned that scalability and the team are two really important criteria. So if you had to pick your top 5 criteria each, they can be different. What would you say are the top 5 criteria to enter, other than scalability and team, because we already have that?
It's not an easy question. Can we say top 3?
Top 3 other than scalability and team, then.
So for scalability, you mean ambition, or?
No, I mean, like, if you had to say what are the top 3 criteria that they look at?
So ambition is one. Yeah.
Okay, so ambition.
So ambition, traction and/or revenue. So revenue is a tricky one. If you have a little bit of revenue, it's not going to make a huge difference. If you have, a small revenue, it's not that critical. But if you have traction and if you show basically, and one thing I'll comment on that, traction that doesn't necessarily mean only growth. Definitely not. In these days. It's more about like retention graphs, like feedback from your users. They prefer to, and actually I think a lot of investors right now are really switching to another mode. Instead of looking at your growth rates, they will look at, they prefer you to have 100 users that really are passionate about your product than 10,000 users who don't really who are not really in love with it. So your retention curves need to be amazing. The goal is that the idea behind it is that if you create a product that 100 or 1,000 people absolutely love, you'll find a lot more of these, and you'll be able to grow. But the reverse is not necessarily true. So I'd say traction, and keep that in mind, like the comment about that. So traction would be one.
They love people that are really solving problems they care about. Just after our batch, they actually, in the following batch, they had a nuclear fusion startup. They also have a fission startup. I mean, that was completely insane. But well, they did that. And
a cancer. So I think it was an incredible story. Somebody in our batch, I don't remember their name unfortunately, but somebody in our batch was a doctor. It was a doctor who was treating cancer, people with cancer, and. His pitch was incredible. So he basically lost every patient he had to cancer, and so he was working on a solution to fix cancer, to cure cancer, and he was incredibly passionate about it because he felt the problem. So it was more than just a personal problem. He was really feeling it on a daily basis, and so he was really committed to solving it, and not just because it was a great thing to solve.
And maybe I would add one that may be obvious, but alumni recommendations or feedback or any validation by alumni. YC is a kind of, even if it's pretty large, it's a tight community where people default to trust among themselves. So if you got alumni that vouch for you, that's saying a lot. Either for recommending the application, but it can also be like if you have actually YC companies as your users or customers, it's going to help too. Yeah, and at the same, the truth is also that it's sometimes a bit more difficult to get recommendation from alumni, because alumni know that it's also their reputation. So alumni won't just recommend you just because you are nice. I mean, they want to see something.
Yeah, and one thing, because that's actually a really important, and that's a side answer, but like one thing that's really important to understand is what Nicolas just mentioned about the recommendations. It's important, having weak recommendations are useless. So if you go to like hunt, alumni and try to get a recommendation from everybody, and you get weak recommendations, it doesn't help you at all.
So the thing you may want to explain is that you can grade your recommendation. It can be at a different level. If you put a very strong recommendation in, you are in a way betting your reputation on your recommendation.
So the question is, what do we consider a great recommendation? So it's just, how well, for instance, if we know somebody personally and, we've seen them working, like a year or 2 years on their idea, we've seen them hustle and we've seen them really iterate on that, and we know them personally, things like that will get a very strong recommendation. Keeping in mind the focus from a team standpoint, the market and so on, that's also important. But for me personally, if I know personally somebody who's, working every day for the past few years trying to make something work, and I know that he has a really, get shit done attitude, that will get a strong recommendation. A weak recommendation would be, for me, again, that's just, every person resonates differently. For me, a weak recommendation is, I meet somebody at let's say at an event here, and then they ask for a recommendation. I ask them what they do. They quickly pitch it for me for a few minutes. Like, I probably won't recommend, or I'll recommend like a really weak one. If the market sounds good, like if the idea and the market and the team sounds good on paper, I'll probably give a weak recommendation, but I won't go more than a weak recommendation based on a few-minute chat. I don't know if that's different.
Yeah, it's basically that. I mean, there is a huge difference in, I met this guy, I loved him. You should read his application, and I love the team. I followed them for 2 years. I saw their progress. I saw how they react. I basically vouch for them. I'm sure they are going to be great, or whatever. Like something where you go full in. Of course, that's not exactly the same value, because of course when they read the recommendation, I mean, they are humans.
I think Nicolas touched on it, but Alexei, can you talk about your recommendations, how you went about getting them, and your story?
Sure. Mine is easier. We had no recommendations. So at the time we were really naive, I think. I don't want to say stupid, so I'll say naive, but we didn't think of Y Combinator. First of all, we didn't think of Y Combinator as a reality. For us, Y Combinator was a dream, the US dream, and we were like the little French guys. We were still students.
Yeah, the thing is that they were still students.
Yeah, we were still students when we applied. We were students at EPITA in third year out of a five-year course. So we're in the middle of our studies, and Y Combinator we were reading Hacker News, which is a tech blog held by Y Combinator. And so that's how we knew from Y Combinator. So we knew a lot of companies, we heard about a lot of companies that went through Y Combinator. And we just, one day, I think we went to the office and we decided to apply because we saw the application were open. And we worked a little bit on our application process. And I remember we were super excited when we got a question from the partners, but before even knowing that we'll go to the interview. We had a question, and we thought the Y Combinator wouldn't even read our application, and then we had a question from a partner saying, "Oh, can you explain this a little bit more?" And then something really happened, and so we thought, wow, like they actually read our application, they want to learn more. Like we might like there might be a small chance. And then we got a reply to go to the interview, and that's where really things became a little bit more concrete. But to get back to your question, we didn't have any recommendations because one, we didn't value these. We didn't even know where to start. and we didn't think it would help, but we just didn't think about it, which is why actually one of the reasons we launched the free initiative is also to give people easier access to that community, but also to make people aware that you can actually make your application stronger by talking to alumni, by getting feedback from alumni, and so on. So yeah, that's our story for Y Combinator.
How much was the whole process? I mean,
How long?
tickets. How much did it cost?
To apply to Y Combinator?
No, I mean, once you got in, plane tickets, rentals, because you maybe lost a lot of cash into this acceleration process.
I'm not sure I understand.
No, en fait, so they actually give you money when you get in. So that's maybe something you missed. And that changed actually the batch right after us, unfortunately for us. So now I think they give you $120K for the 7% of the company. So with that, you have plenty enough to pay for the trip, accommodation, and everything. And for the interview itself, they actually, I don't remember how much, but they pay something. I mean, at our time it was like $1,200, but I think it's much more now.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, so they pay a little bit for your plane tickets to fly you in. You might have to pay a little difference, but they pay a lot of it, and then the 120K is more than enough to. That money is basically to make sure that you get in Silicon Valley as quickly as possible without thinking of like, I need to get that plane 2 weeks later because it's like 200 euros cheaper. And to make sure that you get your apartment. So founders usually live together. Some exceptions to that rule, but usually founders live together during the 3 months of Y Combinator. And so you basically get your apartment, you get internet, you get your car or whatever you need, and you get started. And that money is really to make sure that all of these costs are offset and are not, weighing into your mind.
Hi, my question is, what are the biggest assets of Y Combinator? I mean, what are the top 3 things that you think made you go way faster than usual?
The first one is actually not Y Combinator. It's just the excuse to work on the company full-time, 24/7 for 3 months. So what happened is that we moved in a house close to Y Combinator. We were 6 people at that time. So we were all 6 living in the same place. And basically you would go to bed, someone would still work. You would wake up, someone would already be working. And so it was like kind of a sprint, not really sustainable long term, but that was probably the best. I mean, we would have an idea in the morning, in the evening it would be in production. Constantly testing, a lot of iteration. So that was probably the most valuable part. And why I say an excuse, because it gives you like the context to do so. We could have rent a house when we had raised money, so we could even pay for that ourselves. We could have done exactly the same thing, but without the pressure, the peer pressure. I mean, you got like 70 other batch mates, other companies that are doing the same. Without the regular checkups, without all of that, you are not going to give all of that yourself. 2 of us had families, so that was a very strong commitment. So yeah, number 1. You want to?
One I can think of is every week there's a gathering of so there's small groups that are created within Y Combinator, small groups of startups. So there's maybe 5-6 startups per group, and they all chat about their failures. It's debrief. It's like a weekly debrief. So they chat about their failures from last week, their successes from last week, and how they solved some of these problems. And so what's interesting is that usually those groups are created, to have, they're a little bit slightly different stages. And so sometimes you have a company that is facing a problem, and you faced this exact problem maybe 6 months before. So they share this problem, and you say, well, hey, we had this problem. That's what we did to fix it. You should try that. So you can really, it's exchange feedback from companies as well, and that's on a weekly basis. And it also brings you pressure because every week you're in front of your friends and you have to, if you messed up during the past week, it really puts pressure onto making the next week better. Otherwise, you're going to look like a fool in the batch.
Actually, that same day, there is a weekly dinner, and that's also, I love this one. They basically invite like a founder. They did get, the batch after us was Zuckerberg came, we had Airbnb, we had like many others, and it's kind of like, I don't know, you see someone passionate explaining how they failed, how they got up again, tried again, and finally succeeded. And it's very humbling also because you see, they faced such like strong odds against them. If you speak with like the Airbnb guys, for example, and then your struggle is like, actually what I'm facing is nothing. You go back to your place from that evening, you want to go back right away to work. Like you want to go back to work right away. The motivation you get from that is really huge.
One thing I'll emphasize, it was Nicolas' point one, the excuse of YC. So just to talk about our experience from YC, as Nicolas mentioned, it was a sprint. So 3 months, you race to really, succeed, like to really move forward as fast as possible. And so we had a just to show you how strong that peer pressure is of like being a YC. So we had an iPad or on the TV, I don't remember, we had an iPad with the timer on until demo day. So we were always looking at that watch and sort of like we have X days left before demo day. So every time a friend called to get a beer, we were like looking at the watch, we're like, that's not gonna make it. And we were basically up. So we had customers in Paris. So we started the day very early, so maybe like 6, 7 a.m. And then we worked with Paris until Paris day was over. And then we worked with US customers. And then we prepared reports because at the time we had nothing automated for customers. So we prepared reports up until to maybe like midnight or 1 or 2 a.m. And then it happened over the next day, the next day, the next day. And so we had a Friday night beer. That was our break. And then Saturday and Sunday was development mode because there was no customers basically, luckily. And then it started over on Monday and so on. So that really, that pressure, I think for us was the strongest. Out of those three, for us, it was the strongest element of Y Combinator.
And then, of course, you get many others, like the quality of the partners, the alumni network, like all of the usual suspects are here too, of course.
Yeah, that's actually really important because, we say like the quality of the partners as it's like, we didn't even mention the partners, which I'm sorry if you're watching, but they're really great partners that are here to help you. They're really, really smart. But there's just so many things on top of that that makes the YC experience so great.
Yeah, all the partners are previous founders, and they have like an incredible experience that is so useful for you. So, this one goes even without saying.
Hi, my question is more for Nicolas. Considering that your seed series was very important and that the deal of Algolia was kind of cheap, how did Index and Alvin take the news? Were they like very happy or like reluctant?
No, at first. The first reaction was not so positive of us going to YC. You just raise money, why do you go to YC? There is no need. But when we were really committed to go, they trusted us and they let us do that, they followed us. And of course, after YC, they were very happy that we did it. But before doing YC, it was not that obvious. Today, after our success, it's not the same. They could even recommend some of their companies to do it because they saw that it worked for us.
I think it's more a question for Nicolas. You mentioned that you raised over €1 million before going to YC, so I guess at this time you already had a team employees. How did you handle that when going to YC?
We asked them. So when we applied the second time, we just had 2 employees. they both were ecstatic to go to YC. And then we arrived at YC, we were 6, and the 2 additional employees were interns. And when they knew they could do their internship at YC, I mean, of course, it was a no-brainer. The question arose a bit later when we decided to come back to France. So there was a true question after YC: should we stay there? Should we come back? For us, it was pretty much simple. My co-founder was having a second baby at that time. There was no way he was going to move before having the baby. So the question became, oh, should we split the team, or should we all go back to Paris? And we finally decided to all go back to Paris, mostly because we were still too early to be separated. We saw that as too difficult to be like the co-founders at 9 hours time difference. So we all came back and we started to fly back and forth. And today it became one of our biggest challenge to scale over 2 continents, but also one of our greatest advantages, like to create a really strong team in Paris.
Hi, I have a question, which is, is there something you expected in the YC that didn't really happen?
So one thing for me was the people at Y Combinator, the startups that were there with us. I would have loved to have more interactions with them. So YC provides a little bit of framework for that. So there's the weekly dinners, there's the small groups to meet every week. But at the end, we were very focused, which I think is good for the company. But if something was to change, if I had to go back and change something, I think that spending a little bit more time with the other founders would have been great. I also think, maybe that's an excuse, I don't know, but I also think because we were French, at least on our side, I don't want to, you can share your feedback. On our side, I think because we were French, we don't really try to integrate ourselves into the US community. And they all had their stories. They had all like friends from the same universities, and so they had all connections somehow. And we didn't really have any at Y Combinator. And I think that's something that I would have really changed or focused on a little bit more today.
Well, we did have a few friendly companies, like other SaaS API businesses and so on, that we interacted with a lot. But I don't know if there was anything. I didn't know what to expect really, so I'm not sure there is anything that was so. There was so many surprises, but there was not like something like deception or anything.
I wanted to ask you, to what extent did YC help you penetrate the US market, and if your product has a cultural change between France and the US, do they help you overcome this cultural change in your product? For example, in health devices, like the systems are different and so on.
That's actually, I think, a fantastic question. So 2 things: how did they help us penetrate the US market, and then cultural change. So the first day, I think, of Y Combinator, at the time, Paul Graham, the co-founder of Y Combinator, I think it was his last batch in Y Combinator. So we were the lucky last ones to be able to interact with him a lot. And the first day of Y Combinator, he sat down with us for about 10 minutes. Us as in MotionLead individually. So he sat down with us and he asked us, how can they help? He asked us, who do we need to talk to? And so we said gaming advertisers. So people who have games on the app stores. And so he said, okay, what games? And so we think of the top 20 spenders worldwide. And so we say whatever, Electronic Arts, Zynga, whatever, and 3 other companies. And so he opens his laptop and he writes an email to Zynga's CEO and CCs us. And he's like, you need to talk to them. And probably 3 minutes later, we have a reply with the senior people from the company. And we are setting up meeting for the next week. That was the first day. So I think in that sense, we gained a lot of time because when you try to network with like US companies and you try to get into that market, it may take a long time if you don't have any connections, which again, we were students, so we had 0 connections at the time. That's one thing, is really get major people to talk to in the US market that you wouldn't know of. And then cultural, so that helps you a lot, sort of create a network there. Credibility as well, people trust you a little bit more when you say you're backed by Y Combinator, in the US at least. And the cultural aspect, for us, the cultural aspect was a little bit different. So Y Combinator helped us get into a US mindset. But I think that eventually, they help you with that, but eventually it takes time to build a different culture and adapt to the US. So we had to adapt our product, the things. Sometimes like we had the same product, but we had to pitch it differently based on like what they're expecting. In the US, meetings are usually 20 minutes. Often 20 minutes. In France, it's often 50 to an hour. So when you go in a meeting and you think you have an hour and then you have 20 minutes, and the guy actually says, "I'm sorry, I have to go in 5 minutes," your meeting is fucked up. So then you need to really start over. So a lot of small things, they helped us really identify and change really quickly.
In our case, the product was the same, no specific change for the market. No, maybe one quick story just for the label, like having the Y Combinator label. This customer, Crunchbase, was one of our very first customers. We actually met them before Y Combinator. I still remember that meeting. They basically knew we're the best product for them. They wanted to use us. But the guy said, like there is this question of you being a French company, far away. I don't know what will happen to you. Kind of question you are going to have a lot in the beginning. A month later, we are back in SF, met the same guy, and oh, by the way, we just got accepted to YC. Never got any question anymore.
Good evening, guys. Let's say that you have some traction in France, but you don't have any traction in the US. Can you get to Y Combinator?
I think it happened to the family companies actually. What was the name? The video thing. I don't remember the name. Yeah, AfroStream had some traction here, kind of like proof only in this market, not in the US.
And
yes.
So the question is, do we need to show any signs that there is a product market fit in the US? I'll just answer the first question as well, complete what Nicolas said. When we applied, we only had French customers. We didn't have a lot of French customers, but we had French customers only, and we had 0 interactions with the US. So it didn't really scare them because they saw that what we were building in France, there's no reason for us not to succeed in the US as well. I think that there's one company from the last batch that is only working, their target market is France and some parts of Europe. They still went to Y Combinator, and they explicitly said on their application that their product does not make sense at all in the US because it was something related to the VAT, the VAT, so the tax. There was only specific, there was some requirements basically in France and some countries in Europe. So they mentioned explicitly that, that's not working in the US, and they still get in because again, they're looking at the teams, they're not just looking at what you're doing, and Europe is a large enough market.
Right, going back to the application forms, what do you look at as alumni when you're reading the application forms that come through, and how important is the founder video?
I think it really depends of people. Your application is going to be read by, 2, 3, 4 alumni and one partner, and maybe more depending on how deep they are going. Some of them may only look at the video. Some of them may not even open it. So I think it's pretty important. I think that anyway, if your application basically pass through, go for later stages, they will all look at the video just to meet the founders. But some may just say, oh, this application looks bad without even looking at the video. So the thing is that the quality in terms of production of the video doesn't matter at all. You don't need to have like a very nice professional video at all. You can make a video with your iPhone. Be genuine. I mean, of course, as everyone, you kind of script it a little. Ideally, you wouldn't, but you want to be seen. They want to see you as founders. They don't care about, I mean, they care about what you say, but it's more about seeing how you are, how you speak, more than anything else.
For me, for instance, I don't necessarily look at the videos initially. I look at the application, and then the video is sort of, once I understood, you know, the application and what's going on, then I look at the video. But it's a second term. It's a second step, and everybody's a little bit different, obviously.
What happened to us is that we did a very quick video without really putting any effort in it for the second application, and Michael Siebel, to whom we asked his opinion, said, "Hey guys, do a proper video." So it can be at least a bit important.
Hi. Does YC impose the startup to move the technical team in YC?
So there's two steps. First step is while you're at Y Combinator, and second step is after Y Combinator. So during Y Combinator, they want the founders, at least the founders, to all move to Silicon Valley for 3 months. And then after Y Combinator, they recommend you to stay in Silicon Valley, but they don't impose, I mean, they don't force it on you in any way.
And even if they don't ask for it, I would definitely recommend you to move all the company to the US during the batch. Well, out of special circumstances, if you are like a 50 people company, maybe it doesn't make sense. But if you can make it, that the employees can move, it's so much better to have everyone together. Otherwise, the people would simply not understand. They will still have their life here in Paris. They will feel completely disconnected. Yeah, it's so much better to have everyone. And it's a very good team building activity. Either it breaks everything or it builds ties that are very strong.
Good evening. Who is managing the visa?
Yourself.
Because when you are going to the US, you need a visa.
You do.
I think there's a YC company who now is tackling that, but you take care of it, not them.
Quick recommendation, I don't know all your nationalities, but for French people, it's pretty easy to get the B1. The B1 is the business visa. You can go there for 6 months. It's much better than using the waiver. The waiver is 3 months, which means that because of the length of YC, basically you need to come back and to go back there if you want to keep some time for fundraising at the end or anything. Much better to take a B1. It's a very easy process. You don't even need a lawyer to do this one. So I would really recommend this one. And then after, if you want to stay there, you also have to manage the visa. The one I would recommend for those who knows is the E2. We didn't do it, we regret it, because the E2 is a company visa. That means that once you have it, you can very easily move anyone from France to San Francisco. You don't have to have a new approval or anything. So if you can get the E2, well, that's for after YC anyway.
Or you can find a great American partner and marry them.
So basically, it's not easier to get the visa after YC if you are a YC alumni, right?
It is. It is depending of the visa, depending of the people reviewing your application. Anyway, at the end, because YC is a good kind of like a good proof indicator of success. But then the visa administration may not even know about YC, so it really depends. But it will help you because you can. I mean, for example, YC will help you to get some press, and press will help you to get a visa. So it's a whole. It's difficult to really look at each element in isolation, but doing YC will help you to get a visa. It's pretty rare that YC founders don't get a visa after their batch.
You mentioned you have the alumni that also gives advice to French startups that want to go to YC, but you didn't mention the name or the website or how?
Sure. So I'm very against advertising. So self-advertising. So it's French to YC at gmail.com. So you can look it up. Actually, there's a post today on Les Echos about this initiative. So you can find it there really easily. And there's the 10 names and the email. And it's 10 French alumni that went through YC in the last 2 years, basically. And again, I repeat, that's French to TO, and then YC at gmail.com. And so far, by the way, just a quick recap, we've received basically two very different types of emails. The first ones are applications, so people are applying to YC right now and they're looking for help. The other types of emails that we received is people that are thinking about applying to Y Combinator later on, and they want to chat and just understand a little bit more about Y Combinator. So for any of these two sort of situations, I think it's a great way to get help.
If you had to apply again to YC today, what would you apply for? What kind of project, what kind of market, if you had to apply it again?
Oh, are you asking for yourself?
Yeah,
or?
for you too.
Oh, so for me, I don't have the answer right now, but I would definitely focus on something that a problem that I've seen over the past few years within the company. Personally, I would focus on B2B. I don't really like B2C because there's no specific person to talk to. There's no head of, or there's no CEO you can talk to and convince them to buy your product. So for me, it would be B2B with a pain that I've been feeling at the company. So some problems are arising, and sort of help these. I would talk to other companies and see if they had the same problem as I did. And one that might be tricky, but I would focus on something that startups can try. Some products are really geared towards large companies. Some products are geared towards smaller companies. I would really love to apply for a product that works for small companies because they're easy to work with. But bottom line is I don't know, because that's a longer process to think of. But that would be the indicators that I have today.
In my case, still so much to do with the company, with Algolia, that I confess I never think about what's next.
Question about the location. There are different locations for YC, or it's only SF, and then there is a project for expansion?
They are all in Mountain View, actually, so there is only one location. They expand, but all in Mountain View, so they now are way above 100 startups per batch, all in the same place. They don't provide any accommodation or office space, so their space is just for the dinners and office hours and so on.
Hi, do you think you would have met the same success if you were incubated in a French system, in a French incubator, or a European one?
Yes, we would have had less success if we had stayed here. In our case, our market, out of purely YC, our market is worldwide. Today, 60% of our business comes from the US. It would have been much more difficult to really address that market from here than going there.
Yeah, for us too, if we had stayed in France, there's a lot of customers in the US that we can't address because Skype can only do so well, but eventually you have to meet those people. So going back and forth is fine, but it's some customers, and a lot of them are US. Some large customers really need to see you and see that you're, as Nicolas mentioned earlier, they need to see that you're on the same land as they are. So we would have missed a big opportunity there as well.
Well, thank you very much. A big round of applause for the couple of them.
Thanks a lot for coming.
Family.